My name is George William Hackshaw. I was born in the Schullcoast Union Workhouse in 1855. My mother Elizabeth Hackshaw was an 18-year-old unwed mother, which means I was born a poor bastard. After we were released from the workhouse, my mother became a prostitute, and was imprisoned for possession of stolen goods when I was 3 years old. I was housed in the dormitories of the Ragged Industrial School of Hull, where I was taught to repair shoes, and some reading and writing by Methodist missionaries. When I turned 15, I was deemed old enough to work on a fishing smack. Fishing the North Sea was hard and dangerous. Mr. Elliot was a heavy drinker, as were others of our crew, making the work double fraught with peril. In 1874 there was an incident where one of the skippers of our fleet was so drunk he fell overboard and drowned. Shortly thereafter, I absconded and broke my apprenticeship contract. I was caught over a year later. I was arrested, tried and imprisoned for 10 weeks, before being returned to the fishing fleet to complete my apprenticeship in 1876. That same year my mother, Elizabeth, died penniless and alone. That was also the year I married Sarah Anna Harrison of Hull. I could now work for wages, on any ship I wanted. I left my wife and began fishing out of the harbour in Grimsby. I married Sarah Ann Petman of Grimsby in 1882. In 1883, after Sarah Ann gave birth to a daughter, and I earned my certification as second-hand, I left my second wife and sought work near London. In 1886 I married my third wife, Anne Alice Connor, in London's East Side, and we had 5 children. During the 1890 London dock strikes, I was able to employ myself as a shoe repair man, a skill I had learned from the Ragged Industrial School of Hull. During the Great War, I joined the 1st Essex Heavy Battery, as a gunner. Our job was to transport and fire field artillery guns. I served in the Battle of Ypres in November 1917. For that I was awarded 2 medals in 1919. I died April 3, 1924 in Rochford, Essex when I was 69 years old.
My name is Sarah Ann Petman. I was born in Hull in 1859. My parents moved to Grimsby, across the Humber estuary from Hull when I was 12 years old. My father, John William Petman, was a ship rigger, manufacturing and repairing the ropes and tackle used to control the sails on ocean-going vessels. My mother, Ann Lawton, was part of the business, while at the same time running another business selling used furniture and other effects. When I was 19 years old I met and married a handsome sailor named Adam Heine. When I was 6 months pregnant with our first child, my husband drowned while his ship, Tinsdale, was in the harbour of Saint-Nazaire, France. I married my second husband, George William Hackshaw, a fisherman, when I was 23 years old, and my first child was 1 year old. 1 year after our marriage, I had my second child, a daughter. We named her Elizabeth Hackshaw. When our daughter was not yet 1 year old, my second husband, George William Hackshaw, abandoned us. He left and never came back. When I was 25 years old, I married my third husband, Frederick Prevett. He soon became dockmaster in the Grimsby harbour, a safe and well-paying job. Fred and I had 4 sons and 3 daughters, though 2 of the daughters died in infancy. In 1902, my eldest daughter got married, and in the process my children discovered that I had been married to 2 other men before I married Fred Prevett. My eldest daughter and her husband moved to Canada in 1905. My youngest son Cyril Prevett followed her to Canada after the Great War. Fred and I lived out our days together in Grimsby. I died in 1926 when I was 66 years old.
My name is Anne Elizabeth. I was born in Grimsby in 1883. My father was Fred Prevett, the dockmaster in Grimsby Harbour, and my mother was Sarah Ann Petman of the Petman Manufacturing Company. I grew up on the docks of Grimsby where my father, uncles, cousins and older brother all worked. I was a daughter in a family of boys, so I was quite used to the rough and tumble. In 1901, I met Louis Curtis, who had recently been honorably discharged from the King's Royal Rifles, and was working as a goods porter for the Grimsby Harbour Railroad. In 1902, Louis and I chose to get married. One of the requirements in applying for a marriage license is to produce a birth certificate. However, the Grimsby registrar's office could not find any record of my birth. It was at this time that my parents told me that Fred was not my real father. I was not a Prevett. Instead, my official name was Anne Elizabeth Hackshaw. In 1905, my husband, our 2 infant sons, and I moved to Canada. There we had 2 more children, and bought a farm in Manitoba. My husband, Louis, joined the Canadian Expeditionary Force in 1916, and died in the Battle of Amiens in 1918. In 1930, I married a Great War veteran and rum runner, Ben Sprung. Ben died in 1965. I died in 1978, when I was 95 years old. In spite of what my birth certificate said, I always considered myself to be a Prevett.